My sister Chloe always had an excuse: a sudden illness, a work emergency, anything to avoid celebrating my milestones. But when she pulled the same disappearing act on my wedding day, claiming she was too sick to even get out of bed, a seed of suspicion took root. What I discovered in the following months would unravel our family in ways I never imagined. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the veil, the delicate lace feeling like a fragile web about to tear. Today was supposed to be perfect. My wedding day. A day I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl, sketching elaborate dresses in my notebook and imagining my Prince Charming waiting at the end of the aisle. Mark was everything I'd ever wanted. Kind, funny, and with a smile that could melt away any worry. But as I looked at my reflection, a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Chloe wasn't here. My younger sister Chloe had always been complicated. Growing up, she was the life of the party, the one who effortlessly charmed everyone with her quick wit and infectious laughter. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, responsible one, always making sure the bills were paid and the house was tidy. We were two sides of the same coin, or so I thought. Over the years, Chloe's bright spark had seemed to dim. She'd drifted from job to job, relationship to relationship, always with a dramatic reason for the latest upheaval. I'd always been there for her, offering a listening ear, a spare room, or a loan when she was short on cash. Mom and Dad always said, "That's what family does, Lily." And I believed them. But lately, Chloe's excuses had started to wear thin. She'd missed my graduation party, claiming a last-minute work trip. She'd bailed on my engagement dinner with a vague stomach bug. Each time I'd felt a pang of disappointment, but I'd brushed it off, telling myself she had her own life to lead. My wedding, however, felt different. This wasn't just another casual event. This was huge. I'd pictured Chloe standing beside me as my maid of honor, her infectious laughter echoing through the reception hall. But this morning, a text message had popped up on my phone. "So sorry, Lil. Came down with something nasty, can't even get out of bed. So gutted to miss your big day. Love you." Gutted? I stared at the message, my heart sinking. This was Chloe's go-to excuse. The nasty bug that always seemed to strike whenever she had to do something she didn't want to. A wave of frustration washed over me, quickly followed by a prickle of suspicion. "Everything all right, honey?" My mom's voice broke through my thoughts. She stepped into the room, her eyes crinkling with concern as she saw my face. I forced a smile. "Yeah, Mom, just... Chloe can't make it. She's sick." Mom's expression softened. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That's just awful." She gave me a comforting hug. "But today is about you and Mark. Don't let anything spoil it." I nodded, trying to push my disappointment aside. Mom was right. Today was about Mark and me. But the thought of Chloe lying in bed, supposedly miserable while I was celebrating, felt like a shadow hanging over the day. The ceremony was beautiful. Mark's vows were heartfelt, and as we exchanged rings, I felt a surge of happiness. But even as I danced with him at the reception, Chloe's absence lingered in the back of my mind. A few weeks after the wedding, Mark and I returned from our honeymoon, sun-kissed and relaxed. As I scrolled through social media, a picture stopped me in my tracks. It was Chloe, beaming, with a group of friends at a music festival. The festival had taken place on my wedding day. My blood ran cold. The nasty bug hadn't kept her in bed. She'd been partying. A wave of anger, sharp and intense, washed over me. How could she? My own sister, skipping my wedding to go to a music festival? I confronted her immediately, sending her the picture with a simple question mark. Her reply was defensive and dismissive. "Oh, that? That was an old picture. You know how Facebook is." But I knew it wasn't old. The outfits were recent, and one of the people in the photo had tagged the location and date. The date was undeniably my wedding day. "Chloe, don't lie to me," I texted back, my fingers shaking. "That picture was from the day of my wedding. Why weren't you there?" Silence. Then a few minutes later, a short clipped reply. "It's none of your business, Lily. Just drop it." Drop it? How could I drop it? This wasn't just about missing a party. It felt like a deliberate slap in the face. It felt like she didn't care about me at all. Over the next few months, I tried to understand. I called her, I texted her, I even went to her apartment, but she refused to talk to me. She'd brush me off with vague excuses or simply ignore my calls. Our once close bond seemed to have completely shattered. As the year went on, life moved forward for Mark and me. We bought a small house, started making plans for the future, but the rift with Chloe remained a painful open wound. Mom and Dad tried to mediate, but Chloe wouldn't budge. She remained stubbornly silent, offering no explanation for her actions. Then, one evening, Mom called me, her voice unusually hesitant. "Lily, can you come over? There's something I need to tell you." I drove to their house, my heart pounding with a sense of unease. Mom and Dad were sitting in the living room, their faces etched with worry. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom took a deep breath. "It's Chloe. She's getting married." Married? My mind reeled. Chloe was getting married? And I was hearing about it from Mom, not from her? "Who is she marrying?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad sighed. "His name is David. He's a bit older, and he's got a lot of money." A lot of money. That explained a lot. Chloe had always been drawn to the finer things in life, and her previous relationships had often been with men who could provide them. "When is the wedding?" I asked, a bitter taste in my mouth. "Next month," Mom said softly. "It's going to be a big affair, very fancy." And I hadn't even received an invitation. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My own sister was getting married, and I wasn't even considered a guest. "Did she say why she didn't tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. She said you wouldn't approve," Dad finally admitted. "She said you'd try to talk her out of it." Wouldn't approve? Try to talk her out of it? I was her sister. I should be happy for her, even if I had reservations about her fiancé. But she hadn't even given me the chance. She'd written me off completely. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. Hurt, anger, betrayal. But beneath it all, a strange sense of clarity began to emerge. I had spent years trying to understand Chloe, trying to fix our relationship, trying to be the good sister. But maybe it was time to stop. Maybe it was time to accept that we were on different paths, and that her choices were hers to make, no matter how much they hurt me. A few weeks later, an extravagant wedding invitation arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Mark Miller. The RSVP card had a space for 2 guests. It was a clear message. I was invited, but Chloe hadn't reached out personally. There was no apology, no explanation, just a formal invitation to witness her marrying a man I'd never met. I looked at the invitation, the heavy cardstock feeling cold in my hand. A wave of defiance washed over me. She thought she could just exclude me from her life, treat me like I didn't matter, and then expect me to show up and celebrate her happiness? No, I wouldn't do it. I decided then and there that I wouldn't attend her wedding. But I wouldn't just send back a polite decline. I would send her a message of my own. The day of Chloe's wedding arrived, a beautiful Saturday filled with sunshine. I knew the ceremony would be starting soon. I picked up my phone and typed out a short text message to Chloe. "I couldn't attend your wedding, you claimed. Now you'll witness mine." Then, I closed the message app and opened my laptop. I logged into the website where Mark and I had eloped the previous weekend, a small, intimate ceremony with just the 2 of us and a justice of the peace. We hadn't told anyone yet, wanting to enjoy our newlywed bliss in private for a little while longer. I uploaded a photo from our wedding day, a picture of Mark and me, beaming, holding hands in front of a beautiful waterfall. Then, I wrote a short, simple caption. "So happy to finally share our wonderful news. Mark and I eloped last weekend, wishing everyone a day filled with love and happiness." I hit post. The notification pinged almost instantly as likes and comments started pouring in. Friends and family were congratulating us, expressing their surprise and joy. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. This was my moment, my happiness. And Chloe could witness it, whether she wanted to or not. I knew my announcement would cause a stir, especially within my family, but I didn't care anymore. I had tried to maintain a relationship with Chloe for years, despite her hurtful behavior. Now it was time to focus on my own happiness, on the loving marriage I had with Mark. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a text message from Chloe. It was short and furious. "How could you do this to me? Today is my wedding day." I stared at the message, a sense of calm settling over me. I had anticipated her reaction. I typed back a simple reply. "Congratulations on your wedding, Chloe. I hope you have a happy life." Then I turned off my phone and walked into the living room, where Mark was waiting for me. He took one look at my face and smiled. "Everything all right?" he asked, his eyes full of love and understanding. I leaned into his embrace. "Everything is perfect," I said, and for the first time in a long time I truly meant it. The drama with Chloe might not be over, but I had taken back my power. I had chosen my own happiness, and that was all that mattered. The fallout from my wedding announcement was immediate and predictable. My phone blew up with calls and texts from Mom and Dad, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. Chloe, predictably, went radio silent after her initial angry text. Mom's voice on the phone was laced with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Lily, how could you? On your sister's wedding day? That was so selfish." "Selfish, Mom?" I retorted, my voice rising. "Chloe skipped my wedding to go to a music festival and didn't even bother to tell me she was getting married until the last minute. Who's being selfish here?" Dad tried to mediate, his tone weary. "Girls, please. Can't we all just try to get along?" But the chasm between Chloe and me felt too wide to bridge. Her actions had made it clear where her priorities lay, and it certainly wasn't with me. The weeks following Chloe's wedding were strangely peaceful for Mark and me. We reveled in our secret, enjoying the quiet intimacy of being husband and wife without the added pressure of a big public celebration. But I knew the calm wouldn't last forever. About a month after Chloe's lavish ceremony, I received a message request on social media from an unfamiliar profile. The name was Sarah Miller, and the profile picture was a blurry shot of a woman I vaguely recognized. Curiosity piqued, I accepted the request. Sarah's first message was short and direct. "Lily, I think we need to talk about Chloe." My heart skipped a beat. Who was this woman, and what did she have to say about my sister? I replied, asking her who she was and what she wanted. Her response was startling. "I'm David's ex-fiancé, and I think Chloe might not be who you think she is." My fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed back, my mind racing. David's ex-fiancé? What was going on? Sarah agreed to meet me for coffee the next day. When I saw her sitting at the table, I recognized her immediately. She was the woman Chloe had been with in several of the photos she'd posted online over the past year. I'd assumed they were just friends. Sarah was a petite woman with kind eyes that held a hint of sadness. She didn't waste any time getting to the point. "David and I were engaged for 3 years," she began, her voice quiet but firm. "We were planning our wedding when he suddenly broke things off with me about 6 months ago. He said he'd met someone else." I nodded slowly, connecting the dots. That someone else was Chloe. "At first I was devastated," Sarah continued. "But then I started seeing pictures of Chloe and David together online. They seemed so happy. I tried to move on, but something just didn't feel right." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee. "Then I saw the pictures from their wedding. It was beautiful, extravagant. Everything our wedding was supposed to be." Her eyes met mine. "And then I saw your announcement about your elopement. On the same day." A chill ran down my spine. Sarah knew. "Lily," she said, leaning forward, "I don't know what your relationship with Chloe is like, but I need to tell you something. David, he's not a good person. He's manipulative and controlling, and I think Chloe might be in over her head." Sarah went on to describe her relationship with David, detailing his constant need for control, his jealousy, and his tendency to isolate her from her friends and family. As she spoke, A growing sense of unease settled in my stomach. This sounded eerily familiar to some of Chloe's past relationships. "I tried to warn her," Sarah said, her voice laced with frustration. "I reached out to Chloe after they started dating, told her about my experience with David, but she wouldn't listen. She said I was just jealous." I wasn't sure what to say. I was still processing the fact that David had a whole other relationship just months before marrying my sister. And Sarah's warnings about his character were deeply concerning. "Why are you telling me all this?" I finally asked. Sarah sighed. "Because I don't want to see another woman get hurt. I know Chloe wasn't kind to me, but I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And honestly, Lily, I think she might need someone on her side." Despite everything that had happened between Chloe and me, Sarah's words resonated. She was right. Chloe was still my sister. And if she was in a bad situation, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. I thanked Sarah for her honesty and promised to think about what she had told me. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger at Chloe for her past behavior, concern for her future, and a nagging sense of responsibility. A few days later, I decided to reach out to Chloe. I sent her a simple text. "Hey, it's Lily. Can we talk?" To my surprise, she replied almost immediately, "What do you want?" Her tone was still cold, but at least she was responding. I suggested we meet for coffee, and after a brief hesitation, she agreed. When I saw Chloe at the coffee shop, she looked different. The vibrant energy she used to possess seemed to have faded, replaced by a weariness around her eyes. She was dressed impeccably, as always, but there was a tension in her posture that I hadn't noticed before. We exchanged awkward greetings, and then I jumped straight to the point. "Sarah Miller contacted me," I said, watching her reaction. Chloe's face paled. "Sarah? What did she say?" I told her about my conversation with Sarah, relaying her concerns about David's controlling behavior. As I spoke, Chloe's initial defensiveness slowly began to crumble. "She's just bitter," Chloe said weakly, but her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," I replied. "But some of the things she said, they sounded familiar, Chloe. You've been in relationships like this before." Chloe looked down at her hands, her expression troubled. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. It's not easy, Lily." And then, the dam broke. Chloe started to talk, and the stories she told me were heartbreaking. David was indeed controlling, constantly criticizing her, dictating what she could wear, who she could see, and even how she spent her money. He was charming in public, but behind closed doors, he was a different person entirely. She admitted that she had rushed into the marriage, blinded by his wealth and the promise of a life of luxury. She had ignored Sarah's warnings and dismissed my concerns because she desperately wanted this to work. But now she was trapped. As I listened to her, my anger towards Chloe began to dissipate, replaced by a wave of empathy. She had made mistakes, hurt me deeply, but she was still my sister, and she was clearly in a difficult situation. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "I was ashamed," she confessed. "I knew you wouldn't approve, and after everything that happened with your wedding, I just didn't think you'd want to hear it." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Chloe, I may not always agree with your choices, but I will always be your sister, and I'm here for you, no matter what." Over the next few weeks, I became Chloe's confidant and support system. We talked for hours, and I encouraged her to consider her options. I reminded her that she was strong and capable, and that she didn't have to stay in a relationship that made her unhappy. It wasn't easy. David was manipulative and tried to isolate her further. But with my support and the quiet encouragement of Mom and Dad, who were also deeply concerned, Chloe slowly began to find her voice. One evening, I received a frantic call from Chloe. She was crying, her voice trembling. He hit me, Lily." My blood ran cold. This had gone too far. "I'm coming over right now," I said, grabbing my keys. When I arrived at their lavish apartment, Chloe was a mess. She had a bruise on her cheek and was visibly shaken. I helped her pack a bag, and together we left. She stayed with Mark and me for a few weeks while she figured out her next steps. It was a difficult time, filled with tears and uncertainty. But slowly, Chloe began to heal. She started seeing a therapist, reconnected with old friends, and began to rebuild her life. The divorce from David was messy and complicated, but Chloe emerged from it stronger and more determined than ever. She found a new job, a small apartment of her own, and started to rediscover the bright, vibrant spirit I had known growing up. Our relationship wasn't instantly fixed. The hurt from the past still lingered, but we started to rebuild, slowly and carefully. We talked openly and honestly about what had happened, acknowledging the pain we had both caused. One afternoon, a few months later, Chloe came over for dinner. We were sitting in the living room after the meal, a comfortable silence between us. "Lily," she said, her voice hesitant, I'm really sorry about your wedding, and about everything else. I was selfish and foolish." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the genuine remorse in her eyes. "I know, Chloe," I said softly, "but I forgive you." A weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. She smiled, a real, heartfelt smile that I hadn't seen in years. "Thank you, Lily. A life isn't a fairy tale. There were still bumps in the road, moments of tension and misunderstanding, but we were sisters, bound by a shared history and a love that, despite everything, had endured." A year later, Mark and I decided to have a small wedding celebration for our first anniversary, a chance to share our happiness with our closest friends and family. Chloe stood beside me as my maid of honor, her laughter echoing through the reception hall, just as I had always imagined. As I looked at her, standing there, happy and healthy, I knew that we had both learned valuable lessons. Chloe had learned that wealth and status weren't everything, and that true happiness came from within. And I had learned that forgiveness wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. Our bond, forged in childhood and tested by adversity, was stronger than ever. And as I danced with Mark under the fairy lights, I knew that our future, together and with my sister by my side, was bright.